13th century Eastern Europe is shaken to its core. The Mongol avalanche sweeps away cities, burns fields, and leaves behind only smoke and ashes. The principalities of Rus, divided and weakened, fall one after another under the onslaught of a new ruthless enemy. But there was one land, one prince, who did not fully submit, who not only survived, but also challenged the Horde. This is the story of the Principality of Galicia-Volhynia and Prince Daniil Romanovich. The politics of a diplomat warrior, a man who dreamed of saving Rus. Welcome to the Amazing History Channel, a channel for those who truly love history. Today, we will tell you how the Principality of Galicia-Volhynia, a borderland at the edge of forests and steppes, became one of the few centers of resistance in the midst of total collapse. Let's go! At the end of the 12th century, Prince Roman Mstislavich unites two principalities, Galicia and Volhynia, into one powerful state. He rules with a firm hand, defeats the Polovtsians, forms an alliance with Byzantium, and even intervenes in the affairs of the Holy Roman Empire. But in 1205, Roman dies during a military campaign. His death marked the beginning of chaos. Roman Mstislavich left behind two sons, Daniil and Vasilko. They were only 4 and 2. And as is usually the case, left without a strong leader, the country immediately fell prey to external enemies and internal ambitions. The local boyars seized power in Galich. The King of Hungary, Polish magnates, Lithuanian voivodes, and nomadic Polovtsians all are trying to grab a piece of the rich land. Galich and Volhynia become the arena of continuous wars and changes of power. For the young Daniil, all of this becomes a school of life. Not through books and teachers, but through the smoke of fires and the clash of swords. He has been fighting since his teenage years. Today he is an ally of the Hungarians. Tomorrow he is their enemy. This is a harsh school where mistakes are not allowed. Step by step, together with his brother Vasilko, Daniil reclaims his father's lands, Volhynia, Peremyshl, Lutsk, Vladimir. By the early 1220s, he becomes one of the most influential princes of the southwest. He is respected, he is feared, he is called a brave and wise man. But beyond the forests, beyond the Dnieper, a threat is already approaching, before which all the old wars pale in comparison. A threat that no one was yet aware of. Spring of 1223, disturbing news is coming from afar. The Polovtsians have been attacked by an unknown enemy who knows no defeat. Burned nomad camps, piles of corpses. No trace of the army. Polovtsian Khans come to Kiev, asking the princes for help. In response, an unprecedented unification of Rus takes place. The Rus and the Polovtsians form a coalition. Among its members is the young and ambitious Daniil Romanovich. For Daniil, this was a chance to show his strength, to establish his name, to become the heir to the glory of his father and his great-grandfather, Vladimir Monomakh. Forward, against an enemy no one knows anything about. Forward, everyone believes that together, with their combined strength, they will overcome him. The first skirmishes bring success. The Allies defeat the scouts, seize livestock, and even capture one of the commanders. There is joy, the confidence of the first victory, but all of this is a trap. The Mongol commander Subutai lures the Allied forces further and further into the steppe, and then, on the banks of the Kalka river, he stops and strikes. It was a massacre. The Mongols did not fight by the rules. They defeated the forces piecemeal, struck from the rear, feigned retreat, and then destroyed everything. It wasn't a battle, it was extermination. Daniil fought until the end. The chronicle says that he didn't even notice when he was wounded in the chest. Only during the retreat did he realize that he was bleeding. He survived, but the alliance was destroyed. That was the first lesson, and the lesson was terrifying. The Mongols don't just fight, they destroy, and then they leave for the steppe, as if nothing ever happened. After the defeat at Kalka, it seemed like everything was over. The Mongols disappeared as if they had vanished into the steppe. But the fear remained. It settled in memory, in chronicles, in a sense of foreboding. But the princes of Rus seemed not to have noticed this lesson. Instead of unity, there were quarrels. Instead of defense, there was civil strife. Everyone fought for their own interests. Everyone thought the threat was somewhere out there, far away, and nearby the enemies were the usual ones. Daniil and his brother Vasilko were in battle every year. The Poles were sometimes allies, sometimes enemies. The Hungarians interfered in the affairs of Galicia, supporting claimants to the throne. The Lithuanians raided the northern borders. The Polovtsians didn't miss the chance to reclaim what they'd lost. The Principality of Galicia-Volhynia found itself at a crossroads. They didn't build empires here, they fought for survival. Daniil recaptured Peremyshul. He fortified Lutsk and reclaimed Volhynia. In every city there was a new intrigue. In every castle a conspiracy. He couldn't relax for a single day. But Daniil is not just a warrior. He's a diplomat. In the 1230s, he grew closer to the Hungarian king, Bela IV. Marriage alliances are arranged, relationships are built. He's not just defending himself, he's thinking about the future, about the crown, about recognition, about the West. But at the same time, he hardly looks to the east. After the Battle of the Kalka River and amid growing Mongol pressure, Kiev lost its political power, but formally it remained the symbolic center of all Rus. Different princes were constantly fighting for control over it. By the early 1230s, Daniil had become strong enough to impose his influence over Kiev as well. He did not move there himself, but appointed his loyal boyar Dmitro to rule the city. For Daniil, controlling Kiev was a step toward restoring the unity of Rus. But he did not suspect that this city would be the first to take the blow of something unprecedented. In the 1240s, the Mongols approached Kiev. Daniil himself was in Hungary at the time. His trip was part of a diplomatic mission. He negotiated an alliance with King Bela IV, seeking support against the Horde. Perhaps he hoped that Kiev would still be able to hold out, or that the city would not become the main target. But the storm did not pass by. In the winter of 1240, the Mongols took Kiev. Boyar Dmitro defended it to the last. The Mongols, impressed by his courage, spared his life. But the city was destroyed. When Daniil returned, he saw only horror. It was impossible to enter Berestie because of the stench of corpses. In Volodymyr-Volynski, in the Church of the Assumption, there were also only the dead. He could have surrendered, admitted defeat, but instead he started a new war. A war just to remain on the map. He builds new fortresses, strengthens the garrisons. He switches to a survival strategy. For the first time, he seriously considers diplomacy with the Horde. The 1240s Rus lies in ruins. The Golden Horde becomes the new center of power in the east. Those who want to rule go to the Khan for a Yarlik. Some go willingly, others out of desperation. But all go to bow. But one prince holds out until the very end, Daniil Romanovich. He does not want to be a vassal. He hopes that the Horde will not return, that he will be able to strengthen the fortresses, gather an army, and wait it out. He refuses to go to Batu's camp. He rejects the demands for a personal oath. He relies on diplomatic maneuvers and tries to buy time. But in 1245, everything changes. Envoys come from the Horde, not letters, an order to appear before Batu, in person. And Daniil understands. There is no choice anymore. The fortifications have only just begun to be built. The Horde is not ready. He says goodbye to his family and goes to the Volga, to Batu's headquarters. 25 days in the center of a foreign world. He drinks kumis, as custom demands. He listens to speeches through interpreters. And he hears from the Khan, "You are now one of us." He does not bow to the dust, but he does not resist either. He accepts formal submission in order to return alive, to buy time. On the way back, he meets Giovanni da Pian del Carpine, a Franciscan and papal legate. Pope Innocent IV sent him east on a desperate mission to try to negotiate with the Mongols or to organize a crusade against them. Carpine delivers a message to Daniil. Rome is ready to help, financially, diplomatically, and possibly even with military force. But there is a condition. The prince must recognize the authority of the Pope and abandon orthodoxy in favor of Catholicism. For Daniil, this is a step of desperation, but also a step of hope. He agrees, and in 1253 in the city of Drohitchin, he receives the crown from the papal envoys. Now he is Rex Rutenorum, the king of Rus. This is a political gesture. Now the Principality of Galicia-Volhynia is an independent power, and it wants to rely on the West, not on the Horde. But no help comes. The Pope's call for a crusade against the Horde remains just a call. No money, no army. Only letters with blessings and demands to remain in the Catholic faith. The West is busy with its own affairs. War between the papacy and the emperor, unrest in Hungary, resistance from the Crusaders in Lithuania. Daniil understands. Hope in Rome is an illusion. He breaks ties with the papacy and returns to real politics. From this situation, he learned the main lesson. You can only rely on your own strength, and he acts. Stone fortresses are rising all over the principality. Cholm, Vladimir, Drohichin, they all become strongholds. His army is the best in Rus. Heavy cavalry, Polovtsian horsemen, battle-hardened infantry. All of this is kept secret, of course. On the surface, there is obedience to the Horde. In 1254, Daniil's principality was like a rock amidst storms. Enemies or potential traitors surrounded it on all sides. To the north were the Lithuanian princes, who had grown stronger and regularly raided the borderlands. To the west was Poland, where princes were embroiled in internal strife, at times allying with Daniil, and at other times with his foes. To the southwest were the Hungarians, who claimed the Galician lands and supported rival princes there. And to the east was the Golden Horde. Daniil is forced to hold the front on all sides. His strategy is not offensive expansion, but a struggle for survival. He strikes first to prevent the enemy from gathering strength. He keeps the initiative. In 1254, clashes with Lithuania and Poland begin. Sometimes it's defense, sometimes it's a preemptive strike. But the main goal is to hold the territory, protect the borders, and prevent the enemies from uniting with each other, or with the Horde. And so, in 1255, when relative calm is achieved in the western direction, Daniil does what he had long hesitated to do. He launches an open offensive against Poland. Horde. Together with his brother Vasilko and his son Lev, he begins an operation to liberate a number of border towns that had come under the direct or indirect control of the Golden Horde. This is no longer covert resistance. This is a challenge, a direct, deliberate challenge to the powerful Khan. Why does he decide to do this? Because he understands that waiting is more dangerous than taking action. Every day of delay strengthens the Horde and weakens the principality. To seize the initiative in war, to declare himself as a real force, not a submissive vassal. But he also knows something else. The Horde will not forgive such audacity. And the Horde responds by sending Kuremsa, but he is weak and is defeated. The people believe that the Horde is not all-powerful, that it is possible to fight, but the Horde learns. After Kuremsa's failed campaign, the Horde realizes that it needs to speak to Daniil differently. In 1257, Khan Berke sends one of his most experienced commanders, Burundai, to Galicia, the Galicia-Volhynia Principality. He does not demand blood, he demands submission, and he does so demonstratively. Meanwhile, Prince Vasilko, the brother of Daniil, is in the city of Volodymyr. There, his daughter's wedding is taking place, with celebrations, a feast, and guests from all over the land. It is during the celebration that news arrives. Burundai demands that they come immediately and obey his will. Vasilko is not a prisoner, but he is not free either. He makes a choice. He goes to Burundai to prevent an immediate invasion. This is not surrender, but an act of forced diplomacy, and so, under the watchful eyes of the Horde, he begins to carry out the order to destroy the fortresses of his own principality. He personally sets fire to the wooden walls of Volodymyr and watches as the ramparts are torn down. This is a ritual humiliation, but the hardest trial is still ahead. The Horde approaches Cholm, the capital of Daniil. The fortified city is the heart of his power. Danilo himself does not go to the negotiations. Burundai sends Vasilko to the walls, as a brother, as a negotiator. But the city is already preparing for defense. The catapults are loaded, the gates are closed. Vasilko stands beneath the walls, surrounded by Horde officers and translators. He is obliged to deliver the order to surrender the fortress, to demolish the fortifications. Vasilko couldn't directly shout to the garrison not to surrender, otherwise he would have been killed on the spot. Instead, he throws stones at the ground. To the Mongols, it must have seemed like a gesture of irritation, but in reality, it was a secret sign to the garrison. Hold on, don't surrender. Burundai sees everything but doesn't order an assault. Why? Maybe he doesn't want to lose men, or maybe because he needs this whole group for something other than fear. Burundai turns away from Cholm. He doesn't forgive, but he leaves, and he directs his anger to the west. The Horde's army crosses the border with Poland and burns cities one after another. And what about Daniil? He leaves the principality again and goes to Hungary, not out of fear, but because he realized, right now, strength is in patience, and victory is in the people who survive. After the humiliation by Burundai, Daniil returns to Kolm, not with an army, not with a sword, but with silence. He no longer builds fortifications, doesn't call for the Pope, doesn't write to kings. He has seen everything. He was an exile in childhood, a warrior in his youth, a king at his peak, and once again an exile in his maturity. He lived not for glory, but to preserve the land, the people, the name, so that Rus could continue to live somewhere. In his later years, he passes power to his son, to Lev Danilovich. He learns from his father not to fight, but to negotiate. He does not resist the Horde. He uses it, making alliances with the Khans against the Poles and Lithuanians. Lev will rule for a long time, and under him, the principality will reach its political peak. Daniil dies in 1264. Without a victorious triumph, but also without a final defeat. He did not become the savior of Rus, but he became the one who did not give up, who fought with his mind and his shield. He became the only king of Rus, receiving neither a crown from his compatriots nor help from his allies. But he left behind his work, his descendants, and his memory, and as long as the name Daniil of Galicia is spoken, it means he has ultimately won. Thank you for being with us on the Amazing History channel. The path of Prince Daniil is a lesson for all times, when it is harder to stand firm than to win. Subscribe if you want to hear more forgotten stories. Write in the comments how you evaluate Daniil's choice. Most importantly, don't lose yourself, even if the world around you falls apart.